guys, welcome back from Daytona Beach. Today I've got a review of the 2018 Kawasaki Z900RS, the retro-styled bike. I'm excited to do this one. This is going up against the Yamaha, very similarly styled 900 Triple that I was interested in purchasing before I got my F09. And this one has very similar specs. This is a year newer, just came out. Initial impressions, I love the looks. These retro style bikes are going to be a love it or hate it kind of thing. Right away, very smooth. This is a super refined engine. You really feel like you're gliding down the road. It feels like a much bigger engine. Lots of smooth torque. Has an electric sound and feel to it. Very squishy seat. Very reminiscent of a Triumph Bonneville seat. Very comfortable. It's definitely a banana. You feel the shape of it, but it's got tons of plush. Tires feel really squishy too. Brake feels decent. Not very sharp bite, but not squishy. Pretty tall. I'm 6'2", 32-inch inseam. I'm standing up and I got about a half-inch under me. It's got a quite plush compliant suspension. Love the exhaust note. It's got quite a loud intake noise as well. You really hear both of them. Got a nice gear whine to it. Very smooth throttle. Barely cracking it. Love the gauges. Very reminiscent of a vintage Honda CB series. Looks a lot like the current CB, what are they up to, 1100? 1150, something like that. Mirrors are huge. I'll adjust them here in a second once we get to this light. Standard controls. Pegs are midway between my knees and my hips. Gearbox is very positive, a little mushy. It's got a nice stick to it, but the pedal, the actual shift peg travel, feels a little rubbery. It's not exactly a snick kind of engagement. Now up here in the mid revs, I don't hear the exhaust at all. Want to get out of this traffic, lug it a little bit. Let's go up into fourth. Tons of low end torque. Just pulls like a large inline 4 engine. Lots of torque. Let's go up into top gear. Get around these cars here. Plenty of torque in top gear here at virtually no RPMs. 2,500 RPM at 45 miles an hour. Roll on. You hear the intake open up and just starts moving. Very nice. No hesitation. 4,500 RPM. Lots of torque building. Let's go down into second. I can't open it up. We're a little too bunched up. Not the best demo route we've got here, but it is what it is. Mirrors are excellent. They are nice and wide. They're very close to you, but they're all the way out to the edges of the bars. Definitely better than the Yamahas, that's for sure. Rock solid. I mean, it's like the engine isn't even running. Great sight picture. I don't see any of my arm in the left and just a tiny bit of my pad on my elbow on the right. I see everything behind me. Dash is a mixed bag. I love the actual gauges, but the center section there, very modern Kawasaki. Unfortunately, they're doing that black dash thing again. Very hard to read. I see the gear indicator, I see the clock, and that is about it. Everything else, I can't even read what the things are. I see a gas gauge, but it's nothing I'm going to glance down at and see very well. Really don't like the black LCD gauge. Now here in direct sun, I can see it, but that's the only angle. So not a fan of that, but a minor niggle. Looking at the bike here, lots of chrome, looks beautiful, great paintwork, goes exceptionally well with the retro styling. We have dual adjustable levers. I love to see that. A lot of times on these mid-price bikes, you only get an adjustable brake. Not a fan of the see-through reservoir cover there. I'd like to much rather see a solid plastic, but that's just me. Really smooth engine. There's hardly any vibration. I feel a little bit through the tank as the revs go up, and that's about it. Just cruising along here. It's darn near silent. You're definitely going to want to put a pipe on it if you're looking for any kind of exciting sound. I would imagine there are some ponies to be had on a full exhaust system. Yeah, definitely not a fan of that brake. Just a little mushy. It could use a bit better bite. I'll have to test the lever here when we get to a light. It's a tall bike. This thing is a sit-up and bag position. My back is perfectly straight and rigid. Bars are very wide. Feels exactly like my FZ09 as far as the seating position and the bars. It does, however, steer a little easier. I don't know if it's got a little less rake or just a little bit more front-end bias, but it does turn in very naturally. A little harsh on the bumps. It's a very soft, plush, compliant suspension. I can tell that I could use a little bit more preload for my weight, and it does bounce a little bit over these bumps. It's not as bad as, say, a stock Yamaha suspension, but it's definitely not something that is fine-tuned. Let me put it that way. There's room for improvement. It's not something you would have to switch up, though. It's not that bad. Definitely has a good weight bias, better than the Yamaha's. It doesn't want to lift the front end, just kind of scoots down the road. I actually like that better. Brake feels just vague. It has a bite, but you have to really squeeze the lever. And yeah, it's pretty mushy. Not as bad as the Ninja 400 was, but it's got just a ton of play. Here's engaged. I can't quite hit the grip, but it's got a whole inch of just mush. And the problem is, it actually starts braking in that mush zone, so it's a little hard to gauge when you're actually riding. Not a fan of how that radiator looks. It's just like they did with the XSR. It just sticks out there, it looks like crap. It's unfinished. Looks like a Honda Civic radiator cap. But again, goes with the retro styling. That's how they were. You didn't have fairings and you didn't have fancy parts covering up the functional parts. That's all there is to it. I left my blinker on there because they had this keychain and it's covering the light. Couldn't see it. I want to get up into the higher RPMs here. Red line is at 10,000 RPM. That's decent. There is a lot of vibration through the frame above 5,000. It's got spots. Right around 8 it's pretty bad. Right around 6 it's pretty bad. My legs are vibrating and tingling. Not something I would want to keep wound up. Turns fine. Doesn't exactly fall into the turns. It feels very tall when it is in the middle of a sharp turn, but it's comfy. Trying to feel where it has a power band. They don't like us to do any kind of slingshotting on these rides, but just trying to get a feel for it. Doesn't really have much of a peak anywhere. I don't feel it falling off up to the red line, but it doesn't really have a big torque rush or a big horsepower peak anywhere. It feels pretty flat. Definitely not like the Yamaha in that regard, where you hit mid RPMs and it's like a turbo switch. This is just neutral. I've got no bar vibration. Grips are very comfortable. And this is, again, a very basic bike. Virtually no frills. You got a basic trip computer function, gear indicator, and that's really it. Basic switches. It's made to actually be a retro bike with modern ABS and fuel injection, and that's pretty much what you get. And that's about where it's priced. So how would I directly compare this to the Yamaha? Well, the Yamaha definitely has a far more exciting engine. Definitely a better exhaust note. But overall, looks-wise, my personal taste is this all day long. I'm not a fan of the way the XSR looks at all. Whereas this one actually looks really nice. This is definitely more comfortable out of the box by far to ride. The seat is very plush. I'm digging the way it feels. This is just like sitting on a big comfy bench. No one's going to have a problem with this seat or have to put on an aftermarket. Suspension is a good mix. 55 miles an hour, doing about 3,200 RPM in top gear. Very smooth. Nice back road cruiser. Cool plane coming in for a landing there. Welcome, Delta. Welcome to Daytona. Obviously, it's a naked bike, so you have zero wind protection, but that's what you get with these bikes. Would you put a fairing on it? I wouldn't. I think it's styled very well from the front. The only reason I put the little sports screen on my bike, my naked bike, my Z900RS, is just because it looked like crap without it. It doesn't actually do anything for wind protection. I don't want a screen on a naked bike. This feels great. Of course, it's not that loud because the wind is hitting you nice and even. And you can see what it looks like from the back right there, because he's on the identical bike. And so is the staff right in front of me. Nobody's going to want more power out of it for the type of bike it is. It has plenty of pull, and it is very linear. When you actually get on it full throttle from a stop there, you hear the exhaust a little bit, but overall it is almost silent. I'm hearing more from the intake than anything else. I hear the engine whirring. The exhaust note is just, you know, typical Euro 4 compliant. Nothing. Overall, this bike feels very refined. It feels like something that's been made for many, many years. I'm very impressed with the way they came out of the box with it. It made it feel so old, yet so new. I know it's kind of stupid because it is a retro-styled new bike, but they really nailed exactly what they were going for. So if you're in the market for this, or you're considering the XSR, definitely check this out. It's not going to appeal to everybody, because like I said, it is a rather tame, electric, smooth ride. Not everyone is looking for that. But overall, they did an excellent job. So there you go. There's your 2018 Kawasaki Z900RS. See you next time.